They were the two most brilliant minds in psychology, and they both stared into the same abyss, the darkness that lives inside every human being. Sigmund Freud believed we are animals in disguise, driven by primitive urges we can barely control. Carl Jung went even deeper. He discovered something terrifying, a hidden part of your mind that whispers terrible things. They called it evil, and both of them found it living inside you. Right now, as you watch this, there's a version of you that you've never met, a version capable of things you'd never admit. Freud and Jung didn't just study the worst of humanity, serial killers, tyrants, monsters. They studied ordinary people, people like you. Evil is not out there. It's in here. And what they discovered about the psychology of evil will change how you see yourself forever. As Jung himself warned, no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. This is the journey into your own darkness. The death drive. In 1920, Sigmund Freud made a discovery that horrified even him. After treating thousands of patients, after decades of studying the human mind, he found something he didn't want to find. We don't just want to live, we want to destroy. He called it Thanatos, the death drive. Freud realized that deep inside every human being, there's a force that doesn't want survival, success, or happiness. It wants annihilation. Think about it. Why do people self-sabotage when they're finally succeeding? Why do we pick fights with the people we love most? Why does humanity keep marching into wars that benefit no one? Freud's answer was chilling. As he wrote in his final years, the goal of all life is death. This wasn't metaphor. He meant it literally. Part of you right now is working against your own survival. Every act of cruelty, every moment of self-destruction, every time you chose pain over peace. That's Thanatos. Death lives inside us. But if Freud found the death drive, Jung would discover something even more terrifying lurking beneath it, the shadow self. Carl Jung disagreed with his mentor about many things, but on one point he went even further. Freud said we have destructive urges. Jung said we have a destructive personality. He called it the shadow, and it's the most dangerous discovery in the history of psychology. Shadow. Your shadow isn't just your dark urges. It's a complete alternate version of yourself. Everything you refuse to acknowledge, every trait you've buried, every capacity for evil you've denied, it doesn't disappear. It becomes a separate entity living in your unconscious. And here's what terrifies most people who learn this. Your shadow is watching. It knows everything about you, every cruel thought you've had, every petty jealousy, every moment you wished harm on someone. As Jung explained, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The less you acknowledge your darkness, the more powerful it becomes. Right now, your shadow is influencing your decisions, your relationships, your entire life, and you don't even know it. But how does this hidden self actually create evil in the world? Projection of evil. Here's where psychology explains the darkest chapters of human history. Both Freud and Jung discovered the same mechanism, projection. We see our evil in others. When you refuse to acknowledge your own capacity for cruelty, something disturbing happens. You start seeing that cruelty everywhere else. The traits you hate most in other people, those are usually the traits you've buried in yourself. Think about the person who makes you angriest. What specifically triggers you? Jung would say, look in the mirror. That rage isn't really about them. Every witch hunt, every genocide, every time a society turns on a scapegoat, it's projection on a massive scale. We destroy others to avoid facing ourselves. As Jung observed while watching Nazi Germany rise, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. The Nazis weren't monsters from another planet. They were ordinary people who couldn't face their own shadows. So they projected all their self-hatred onto the Jews, the disabled, anyone different. This is how ordinary people commit extraordinary evil. And the truly terrifying part, you do this too, every day, just on a smaller scale. But where does this capacity for evil actually come from? The primitive mind. Freud believed we are all at war with ourselves. And the enemy, our own evolutionary past. Beneath the surface of your civilized mind lives what Freud called the ID, a primitive creature driven entirely by pleasure and destruction. The ID doesn't know morality. It doesn't understand consequences. It only knows want. It wants pleasure now. It wants revenge immediately. It wants to dominate, consume, and destroy anyone who threatens its desires. Every time you've had a thought so dark it shocked you, that was your ID breaking through. Every impulse to hurt someone who wronged you. Every flash of rage so intense you scared yourself. As Freud described it, the ID knows no judgments of value, no good and evil, no morality. Your conscious mind, what Freud called the ego, spends its entire existence trying to control this beast. You are the cage, not the animal. But the cage isn't perfect, and sometimes, under the right conditions, the beast gets out. That's when ordinary people become capable of evil they never imagined. But Jung thought Freud was missing something even deeper. Collective darkness. Jung made a discovery that went far beyond individual psychology. He found that evil isn't just personal, it's collective. Collective. Deep beneath your individual unconscious lies something ancient. Jung called it the collective unconscious, a shared psychological inheritance connecting all of humanity. And within it, there are patterns, archetypes, including the archetype of pure evil. This is why every culture on Earth has demons, devils, monsters. These aren't superstitions. They are psychological realities. They are images from the collective unconscious breaking through into consciousness. When societies collapse into madness, mass hysteria, genocide, war, Jung saw it as the collective shadow taking over. Individual egos dissolve into a mob mind, and ancient patterns of violence emerge that have been dormant for millennia. As he witnessed the horrors of the 20th century, Jung wrote, "The individual who wishes to have an answer to the problem of evil has need of self-knowledge. We inherit our ancestors' darkness. Every war crime, every atrocity, every burst of collective insanity, it's the same ancient evil, wearing new faces. But can this darkness ever serve a purpose? Evil's purpose?" Here's where Freud and Jung diverged completely. Freud saw the death drive as a curse, something to be suppressed and controlled until the day we die. Jung saw darkness differently. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. For Jung, your shadow isn't just the source of evil. It's also the source of your greatest potential. Every capacity you've repressed, not just cruelty, but power, passion, raw creative energy, lives in the shadow. By refusing to acknowledge your darkness, you don't just hide your evil. You hide your greatness too. Think about it. The people who change the world, leaders, artists, revolutionaries, they've all touched their darkness. They know what they're capable of. You cannot be truly good until you know how bad you could be. This was Jung's radical insight. Evil isn't something to eliminate. It's something to integrate. Your darkness contains your power, but how do you integrate something so dangerous without being consumed by it? Facing the beast. Both Freud and Jung agreed on one thing. You cannot defeat an enemy you refuse to see. Freud's solution was psychoanalysis, dragging the unconscious into the light through dreams, free association, and years of therapeutic work. The goal? Make the unconscious conscious. See the monster clearly, and it loses its power. Jung went further. He developed a process called shadow work, actively engaging with your dark side through imagination, art, and confrontation. You don't fight your shadow, you negotiate with it. This is counterintuitive. Everything in our culture tells us to reject our dark thoughts, to push away our cruel impulses, to pretend we're better than we are. But both psychologists discovered that suppression makes evil stronger. As Freud observed, unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. Every time you deny your capacity for evil, it grows more powerful in the shadows. What you resist persists. The serial killers, the tyrants, the monsters of history, they are not people with more darkness than you. They are people who never faced their darkness until it consumed them. But what does this mean for your everyday life? Everyday evil. Here's the uncomfortable truth that Freud and Jung want you to understand. You don't need to be a psychopath to do evil. Every day, ordinary people commit small evils. The gossip that destroys a reputation. The passive-aggressive comment designed to hurt. The silent cruelty of indifference. Every time you see someone suffering and look away, that's your shadow at work. Every time you enjoy someone's failure just a little too much, that's Freud's death drive seeking satisfaction. The line separating good and evil passes not through states, but through every human heart. Solzhenitsyn, who survived the Soviet gulags, understood what Freud and Jung discovered clinically. Evil isn't out there, it's in here. Every act of cruelty you commit diminishes your soul. Every time you choose revenge over forgiveness, bitterness over understanding, judgment over compassion, you feed the beast. And one day, if you're not careful, the beast might be all that's left. But there's hope. There's always hope. The integration. Jung called the ultimate goal of psychological development individuation, becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, including the darkness. This doesn't mean acting on your evil impulses. It means acknowledging they exist. The person who knows their capacity for cruelty and chooses kindness is fundamentally different from the person who pretends they could never be cruel. The first person is strong. The second is a ticking time bomb. True goodness requires knowledge of evil. Freud would say, understand your death drive, channel its energy into creation instead of destruction. Jung would say, meet your shadow, shake its hand, and make it your ally. As Jung beautifully expressed, I'd rather be whole than good. Wholeness includes darkness. The saints who inspire us weren't people without darkness. They were people who knew their darkness intimately and chose light anyway. That choice, made with full knowledge of the alternative, is the only true morality. So what does all this mean for you right now, today? Your choice. Freud and Jung gave us the map to our own darkness. What you do with that map is up to you. You can keep pretending your shadow doesn't exist. You can keep projecting your evil onto others, wondering why the world seems so full of terrible people. You can keep feeding the death drive with small cruelties while telling yourself you're a good person. Or you can wake up. You can start the work of self-knowledge. Look honestly at the thoughts you've been hiding. Acknowledge the capacity for evil that lives in your heart. Not to become evil, but to understand it. As Jung warned at the end of his life, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Know your darkness, choose your light. The psychology of evil isn't just academic theory. It's the most practical knowledge you can ever gain, because the monster in the mirror is the only one you can actually control. The question is, will you have the courage to look? Freud and Jung spent their lives mapping the darkness of the human soul. What they found should terrify you, but it should also free you. You are not your worst thoughts. You are the one who can observe those thoughts. You are the one who can choose whether to act on them. The death drive, the shadow, the primitive ID, these aren't forces that control you. They're forces that inform you. Every saint was once a sinner who knew exactly what they were capable of. Every hero faced the darkness within before they could face the darkness without. Evil known is evil tamed. As you leave this video, you carry a new responsibility. You know what lives inside you now. You can't unsee it. But that knowledge, that terrible, beautiful knowledge, is the beginning of real transformation. The psychology of evil isn't a warning. It's an invitation. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Go meet your shadow. It's been waiting. If this changed how you see yourself, subscribe for more journeys into the depths of the human mind.